making her 10th speech. She is going to end up with being our first person to get certification for this year. We are so proud of her for that reason. Anne is a business development manager for an Atlanta-based software company and recently completed her associate's degree in Christian ministry. She is married and currently, albeit very shortly lives in Woodstock, Georgia. She is the oldest of 3 siblings and the proud aunt of 3 nephews. She joined Toastmasters in June of 2011. And as I mentioned today, think about this now, the number of months. She is giving her 10th speech today and will soon have her Competent Communicator certification. Her speech is an 8 to 10 minute speech. The goals for this speech are to inspire and challenge the audience and to appeal to the audience's needs and emotions using stories, anecdotes, and quotes. The title at this point, I'm not telling you. Please help me welcome Anne Futch.
Thank you, Garnett. Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, as Garnett mentioned, the theme for this 10th and final speech for the Competent Communication Certification is a little intimidating. Inspire your audience. Ugh. But seriously, I take this honor very seriously and am just excited to be here today. This is a speech that I've really been looking forward to, and I really wanted to leave everyone with a lasting impression, just to honor the investment that you guys have made in my life. All of your encouragement and all of your critiques have been absolutely invaluable, and I've gotten exactly out of Toastmasters what I wanted to get, which is that confidence to forget about the audience a little bit and thinking that you all are judging me and just get out what's inside of me. Honestly, I think all of my speeches up until now have been preparing me for this speech, even though I've also tried to avoid the topic of this speech because it is so personal. And I don't want to scare you. It's nothing that's going to make you uncomfortable, but it's a topic that's really, really close to my heart. And as I was thinking about what would inspire you all, I started thinking about what inspires me. And then the more I thought about it, the more it was less of what inspires me, but who inspires me. And I have to be honest and tell you, one of the main reasons that I joined Toastmasters was my inability to speak at my father's funeral in 2007. And so the Lord has used it for good, and there were many reasons why. None of them really add up because he did mean so much to me, and I love him so much and wanted to honor him. So today, I'm going to be a little bit selfish and say some of those things that I wanted to say that day and show you how his life and my dad and the legacy that he left me inspires my life today, and I hope that it will inspire you as well. So, there are 3 things you need to know about my dad. And the first one is that he was a self-professed redneck and a lover of the outdoors. He had his own tree removal company for 25 years, successfully owned and operated that out of Ackworth, Georgia, where I grew up. And he ran his business with integrity. He refused to price gouge. Sometimes all of the treemen come in after a storm and charge exorbitant prices to remove a tree. He never did that, and he looked at it as a mission. And so I remember towards the end when he was getting sick and wasn't able to physically climb the trees anymore, he worked for a corporate company doing estimates. And that didn't last very long because he wouldn't mark them up. He wouldn't give the type of estimates that they wanted. But his line of work had a lot of different benefits. And one was that he just always smelled like trees. And he would come home and at the end of the day, and it was just this mixture of pine and sap and bark and a little bit of sweat, and it was just the best smell. And he would always go straight upstairs and wash up and clean up for dinner, before dinner. But sometimes he was so tired and sore that he'd just lay right down on the living room floor when he came in. And my little sister and I would like jump on top of his back and like walk on it to try and get the kinks out. And it seemed insignificant, but it's just precious now to me to think about that. And the other benefit was that he was home a lot. And that was important because of the second thing you should know about my father, which is that he loved his family. And he would just always wrestle with us on the floor and tickle us. In fact, to this day, I have an extreme phobia about anyone touching the bottom of my feet or tickling me because he was merciless. I mean, we would be just like not able to breathe, and he was merciless about it. But that's just who he was. And he would spend hours in the driveway with my sister, playing basketball with her, hours with my brother in the yard playing baseball with him. And I went less of the sport route and more into like acting and singing. And so my special memory with my dad was when we went to Australia for a mission trip. And I was in a singing group, and we were touring the local schools and just performing. And it was 2 weeks. It was like me and my dad, and we bought these matching suede cowboy hats and ran around and said, "G'day, mate," and ate Vegemite, and it was just great. And I'll never forget, there was this other girl on the trip in our group, and she was a little bit older and a little bit bigger, and I have no idea what it was about, but she kind of had an issue with me. And I remember she kind of confronted me in the elevator one day, and she kind of had some other children with her and everything. And she said something, and then all I remember is that the next thing was that she kicked me, like to the ground. I like fell down on the ground in the elevator. And so, I just jumped up and started wailing on her. And I'm just kidding. Y'all didn't really think I did that, did you? No, I'm kidding. I fell down. I started crying. I ran to my dad. I'm like, "Dad, this is what happened." And you know what he did? He told me, he said, "Ann, you're going to have to forgive her." And I'm like, "Dad, I got kicked. I fell down. I'm crying, And he was, "No, you're going to have to forgive her." And thinking about potentially having children of my own one day, it's just amazing to me in that moment. I'm sure he felt protection and anger, and he was able, to teach me a lesson about forgiveness in that moment and point me in a godly direction, just like that. And so I'll never forget that lesson on forgiveness, and I'm just admire him for being able to do that. But the other thing is, and that leads me to the third thing about my dad, which is that he loved the Lord. And at his funeral, it was such a blessing. There were so many people that came up and told how he had told them about the Lord, what a good friend he was, and speaking the truth and giving them grace. One woman testified that Dad was her example of what a godly father was like in her life. And I remember one story was my dad was up in this tree, this really big tall tree, taking it down, and he saw this man walking in a neighborhood along the road. And immediately my dad started coming down from the tree, and taking off all his equipment, and walked over to that man to talk to him about the Lord and share with him that God had a plan for his life and wanted to be in a relationship with him and be with him in heaven one day. And that incident just changed that man's life. And the guy who told that story was the man who had been walking in that neighborhood that day. And so he was able to just share how that had changed his life. And the other thing is that my dad loved my mom with a passion and was always loyal to her. And I just remember if anything somewhat suggestive came on the television, like even kissing, he would just immediately turn the channel because, he was that loyal to my mom. Nothing else was going to get his attention. And I wish I had another 10 minutes to tell you about my mom because she, my dad's my example, my leader, and the man I will try to live up to the rest of my life. But my mom is like my best friend and my prayer warrior, and she gave so much to us kids. She homeschooled us throughout most of my childhood and took us to Whitewater on the summers and took me to Paris for my high school graduation. And she's still my travel buddy. We've done Mexico and Miami so far, and we're looking at the next trip. And she's just been amazing, and she was always loyal to my dad as well. And so, she's given me an example of who I would like to be. She's the woman I'd most want to be like out of anybody in this world. So I've tried to value these same principles in my life from this heritage of my parents, to be proud of the work I'm doing, to do work that I'm proud of, to love my family, to love my Lord, and to finish well. My dad, towards the end, he was peaceful. He really was. He would reference Philippians 4:11, which loosely translated says, I've learned to be content in whatever circumstance. And so even in that, he was an example to me and a leader. And so I hope to honor that one day. And thank you for listening to my parents and how they've inspired me and their legacy. And I hope that it inspires us, that we can just all remember the investment that we can make in other people, especially children, and just who we are can profoundly bless them for generations.